The buried secret, the cold stone beneath feet felt colder still as Father Elias and Sister Miriam knelt by the uneven flagstones of the cathedral's nave. The sunlight that had once bathed the sacred space now struggled to penetrate the thick layers of dust and crumbling mortar. The ancient cathedral, abandoned and hollow, seemed to hold its breath, as if guarding secrets too terrible to be disturbed. Elias wiped sweat from his brow despite the chill in the air. His sharp eyes fixed on the faint outline of a loose flagstone, one that Miriam's careful fingers had revealed earlier that day. The discovery had been subtle, an anomaly in the floor's pattern, a slight hollow beneath his touch. Yet beneath that stone lay the possibility of answers he had hunted for weeks. "Are you certain about this, sister?" Elias asked quietly, voice low enough not to disturb the cathedral's silence. Miriam nodded, her gentle face shadowed by the tattered remnants of her habit. The cathedral's history has been buried for centuries, but the curse, it began long ago. What lies beneath may hold the truth. With a creak and a groan, the flagstone shifted, revealing a narrow, steep staircase descending into darkness. A stale, oppressive air rose from the depths, carrying the faintest scent of wax, and something else, something acrid and old. Elias lit his lantern, its flickering flame casting long shadows on the stone walls as they began their descent. The silence was broken only by the scrape of their boots and the distant drip of water echoing through the crypt. At the bottom, the crypt opened into a chamber lined with stone shelves. Ancient scrolls, brittle and yellowed with time, lay stacked beside relics of faith, crucifixes tarnished by age, fragmented candles, and worn leather-bound books. The air here was thick with the weight of history and an unspoken sorrow. Elias approached a small wooden desk, its surface cluttered with a crumbling journal. His fingers trembled as he carefully opened it, revealing faded ink and hurried scrawlings. The journal belonged to Father Gregory, a name whispered in the cathedral's lore with a mixture of reverence and dread. As Elias read, the story unfolded with harrowing clarity. Gregory had been a man of fervent faith, desperate to defy death itself. His resurrection rites, forbidden and blasphemous, had sought to reclaim souls from the brink of the afterlife. But the ritual had failed. Instead of salvation, it birthed a curse, an eternal flame that burned unceasingly, feeding on death and binding restless souls to the cathedral's shadowed walls. A sudden chill swept through the crypt, stirring dust motes in the lantern light. Elias shivered, the weight of unseen eyes pressing upon him. Whispered voices, barely audible, seemed to rise from the stone floor itself, echoing the mournful cries of trapped souls. "Do you hear them?" Miriam's voice was barely a whisper. "They are bound here, unable to rest." Elias swallowed hard, his skepticism wavering beneath the oppressive atmosphere. The flame was no mere superstition, it was a dark legacy of corrupted faith and forbidden resurrection. His heart pounded as he closed the journal, the final words etched into his mind. The fire must not be allowed to die, for it feeds on death itself, but neither can it be left to burn, lest the souls remain shackled for eternity. A profound silence fell between them, broken only by the soft rustle of ancient parchment. Elias met Miriam's gaze, seeing reflected in her eyes the grim resolve he felt rising within himself. "This changes everything," he murmured. "The candle isn't just a flame, it's a prison, and Father Gregory's sin has chained countless souls here." Miriam nodded slowly. "And if the flame is linked to the curse, then extinguishing it may come at a terrible cost." Elias looked around the crypt, the weight of his mission pressing down like the stone above their heads. The path ahead was fraught with danger, not only from the supernatural force they faced, but from the moral abyss of tampering with souls caught between life and death. As he rose, determination hardened his features. The answers he sought were no longer in doubt. Father Gregory's failed resurrection ritual had sown the seed of the eternal flame's curse. And Elias knew that confronting this legacy meant facing the darkness buried deep within the cathedral and within himself. Yet as they ascended back into the waning light of the cathedral, Elias could not shake the feeling that the restless souls below were watching, waiting, their fate entwined with the flickering candle that refused to die. The secret buried beneath the ancient stones was no longer hidden. The cathedral lay shrouded in a heavy silence, broken only by the faint, irregular flicker of the solitary candle that burned atop the ancient altar. Father Elias stood motionless in the nave, his eyes fixed on the flame that danced with an eerie vitality. It was no ordinary light. The colors shifted unnaturally, wavering between ghostly blue and a deep, unsettling red. The air around it seemed charged, cold yet alive with a presence that defied logic. As Elias stepped closer, the flame began to twist and contort, its shape no longer fixed, but fluid and grotesque. Faces anguished, hollow-eyed and silent materialized and vanished within the blaze. Their features were twisted in eternal torment, their mouths open in voiceless screams that rippled through Elias's very soul. The flickering visages reached out like spectral hands, clawing at the edges of the flame, imploring and accusing. A shiver ran down Elias's spine. He clenched his fists, the worn leather of his gloves creaking softly. "This cannot be," he whispered, voice cracking. "It's just a trick of the light. A hallucination born of shadows and old stones." But deep within, he knew it was more. The flame was alive in a way that defied reason, a beacon for the restless souls ensnared by the cathedral's cursed past. He thought of the journal he had found, the ancient rites of resurrection, the failed attempts to conquer death that had birthed this eternal torment. The heavy wooden doors creaked open behind him, and soft footsteps echoed through the vast space. Sister Miriam appeared from the shadows, her faded habit trailing behind her like a ghostly wraith. Her eyes, gentle yet sorrowful, met Elias's with a knowing look. "You see them," she said quietly, her voice a fragile thread in the vast silence. Elias nodded, swallowing hard. "The faces, trapped in the flame. What does it mean?" She approached the altar slowly, producing from beneath her cloak a fragile manuscript, its edges yellowed and brittle with age. "These are the souls caught by Father Gregory's folly," she murmured, placing the manuscript gently on the stone surface. The resurrection rites he performed were unnatural, driven by desperation and pride. Instead of granting life, he bound death itself to this flame. It feeds on the souls, never allowing them rest. Elias reached out, his fingers trembling as he traced the faded ink that told the tale of corrupted faith and forbidden rituals. Each word weighed heavily on his conscience. The eternal flame was not a mere superstition. It was a manifestation of a profound spiritual corruption, a hunger for life beyond nature's design that had doomed countless souls. "Why?" Elias asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Why would faith lead to such horror?" Sister Miriam sighed, her gaze distant. "Faith, when twisted by fear and obsession, can become a curse. The desire to conquer death blinds the heart to the price it demands. This flame is the price, and the cathedral its prison." The candle's light pulsed suddenly, casting grotesque shadows that writhed along the cracked stone walls. The faces inside the flame seemed to scream silently, their torment echoing in the cold stillness. Elias felt a wave of despair wash over him, the weight of centuries pressing down like a shroud. He sank to his knees, clutching the prayer book to his chest, breath ragged in the frigid air. Doubt gnawed at him, tearing at the fabric of his once steady faith. Could he still believe in a benevolent God when faced with such darkness? Was his mission to extinguish the candle a fool's errand, or worse, a sacrilege? Yet beneath the despair flickered a stubborn flame within Elias, himself a will to understand, to confront the curse and perhaps find redemption for the souls trapped within the cathedral walls. As the candle's light flickered once more, casting its spectral faces into sharp relief, Elias whispered a prayer not for the flame, but for himself. "Grant me strength," he said, "to face the truth and bear its burden." Outside, the wind moaned through broken stained glass, carrying with it the faintest echo of voices long lost to time. The eternal candle burned on, its true face unveiled, and Elias's journey into the heart of darkness deepened irrevocably. The night stretched on, heavy with portent. As the candle's ghostly flames danced like the restless souls, it imprisoned an eternal testament to corrupted faith and the terrible price of resurrection. And within Elias, the fragile boundary between skepticism and belief began to crumble, setting the stage for the harrowing trials yet to come. Father Elias sat alone in the vast, echoing nave of the abandoned cathedral, the cold stone beneath him seeping its chill into his bones. The eternal candle burned steadily before him, its flame an unnatural meld of blue and red, casting grotesque shadows that danced along the cracked walls. The whispers that had begun in the recesses of his mind now swirled around him, faint at first but growing clearer, more insistent, a chorus of anguished souls caught between worlds. He gripped the worn photograph in his hand, the edges frayed from countless nights of restless reflection. It was the face of his lost friend, Father Thomas, whose mysterious illness had shattered Elias's faith and fueled his relentless skepticism. The memory of Thomas's final days, the whispered prayers, the futile ministrations haunted him with unbearable clarity. Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes, unbidden and unwelcome. "Why did you leave me, Thomas?" Elias muttered, voice cracking in the oppressive silence. The candle flickered violently in response, shadows twisting into a semblance of a face pale, sorrowful, and hauntingly familiar. The cathedral seemed to breathe, the air thickening with the scent of burnt wax and ancient incense. Suddenly, the stone floor beneath Elias seemed to dissolve, and he was plunged into a vision. Ethereal figures moved in ghostly procession, a ritual unfolding in spectral light. Father Gregory stood at its center, chanting in a language older than memory, his hands trembling as he attempted to bridge the veil between life and death. Elias's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and recognition. The vision revealed the failed resurrection ritual that had birthed the cursed flame, the price paid in souls bound eternally to this forsaken place. The metallic tang of blood and the acrid smoke of burnt offerings filled the spectral air, suffocating in their intensity. Shaken, Elias gasped, breaking the spell. His breath came ragged, his body slick with cold sweat. The whispers crescendoed into a cacophony, voices pleading for release, for salvation. The candle's flame roared to life, blue and red tongues licking the darkness with malevolent hunger. "Enough," Elias whispered fiercely, clenching his fists. But the wavering resolve within him betrayed his words. Doubt gnawed at his soul, a relentless tide eroding the foundations of his once steadfast faith. He rose unsteadily, eyes fixed on the flickering flame. "What are you truly?" he demanded, voice echoing through the cavernous space. The flame pulsed, as if breathing, the ghostly visages within its core reaching out with spectral fingers. A sudden chill swept through the cathedral, carrying with it the scent of decay and forgotten prayers. Elias felt the weight of centuries pressing down upon him, the legacy of cursed faith entwined with the eternal fire. His skepticism faltered beneath the crushing reality of what he had witnessed and what he had become part of. He sank back onto the stone steps, the photograph slipping from his trembling hands. The faces in the shadows seemed to close in, their silent screams etched into his very being. The candle's light cast a cruel glow, illuminating the fracture within his soul. In that moment, Elias confronted not only the curse that plagued the cathedral, but the darkness within himself, the loss, the doubt, the fear. The eternal flame was no longer merely a superstition to be extinguished, but a living testament to the torment of faith stretched beyond its limits. As the night deepened, Elias clung to the fragile threads of hope, even as the candle's cursed fire burned stubbornly on, refusing to die. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril both supernatural and internal, but he knew he could no longer turn away from the truth that now consumed him. With a heavy heart and a wavering spirit, Father Elias prepared to delve deeper into the cathedral's shadowed past and into the depths of his own soul, where redemption and despair danced in uneasy tandem. The faltering flame within him mirrored the eternal candle, fragile, flickering, yet impossible to extinguish. The cold settled deeper into the cathedral as Father Elias followed Sister Miriam through the narrow, crumbling corridors leading to the sacristy, a small chamber, rarely disturbed except by the whispers of memories it held. The air was thick with dust, motes dancing in the feeble shafts of light that pierced the cracked stained glass windows. The once sacred space now bore the weight of neglect and sorrow, and Elias could feel the oppressive stillness pressing on his chest. Sister Miriam moved with a fragile grace, her fingers tracing the edges of a weathered wooden table, as if seeking comfort from its ancient grain. Her habit was tattered, the fabric thin and worn, yet her eyes held a quiet strength that belied her frail appearance. "Father Elias," she began softly, her voice trembling just enough to betray the gravity of what she was about to share. "There are prayers, old and powerful, that have been whispered here long before your time. They are not mere words but vessels of protection against the darkness that clings to this place." From beneath a pile of dust-covered books and brittle parchments, she produced a fragile scroll, its edges yellowed and curling. With reverence, she unfurled the parchment upon the table, revealing intricate Latin script penned in a careful, deliberate hand. The candlelight flickered, casting giant, writhing shadows against the cracked stone walls as Miriam began to chant the ancient prayer, her voice a haunting melody that seemed to ripple through the air. Elias stood silently, absorbing the cadence of her words. The language was foreign yet evocative, each syllable weaving a tapestry of solemn invocation and desperate plea. As Miriam's voice filled the room, Elias felt the weight of centuries pressing down, the cathedral's past bleeding into the present moment. The flame of the solitary candle nearby danced wildly, as if responding to the prayers with an eerie vitality. When the chant concluded, Miriam looked up, her eyes meeting Elias's with a mixture of hope and warning. "This flame," she said, nodding toward the eternal candle that burned stubbornly in the corner, "is no ordinary light. It is bound to the souls trapped within this cathedral, a beacon forged in a ritual that went horribly wrong. To extinguish it without understanding the cost is to risk unleashing a darkness far worse than this cursed fire." Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cathedral's drafty walls. The priest's certainty that had driven him here now faltered, replaced by a knowing unease. He recalled the deaths he had witnessed, the candle's relentless rebirth, and the whispered legends that had seemed mere superstition until now. Sister Miriam's voice softened as she recounted stories handed down through generations, a history of faith twisted by desperation, of rituals meant to conquer death, but instead binding souls in eternal torment. "The flame feeds on death," she said quietly, "and the souls it traps are caught between worlds, unable to find rest." The priest's mind churned with questions, doubts, and fears. Could this flame truly be the manifestation of a curse born from corrupted faith? Was his mission to extinguish it a sacred duty or a reckless defiance of forces beyond his comprehension? A sudden gust rattled the ancient doors, the howl of wind snaking through the broken windows and extinguishing every candle in the room save the eternal flame. It flared suddenly, its blue and red hues casting ghostly visages upon the walls. Miriam's chant faltered, and an oppressive silence fell, broken only by the distant echo of a bell tolling somewhere beyond the cathedral's ruins. Elias's heart hammered in his chest. The flame seemed alive, watching, waiting. Sister Miriam reached out, pressing a trembling hand against his. "You must be cautious," she urged. "This is not merely a battle of flame and shadow, but of faith and soul." In that moment, Elias felt the weight of her words settle deep within him. His journey was no longer a simple quest to snuff out a superstition, but a pilgrimage through doubt, fear, and the fragile hope that redemption might still be found in this place of cursed light. As the candle's flicker played across their faces, Elias knew the path ahead would demand more than conviction. It would demand surrender, sacrifice, and the courage to face the darkness both without and within. The cathedral held its breath, the eternal flame flickering quietly, a silent sentinel to the unfolding battle of faith and despair. And somewhere deep in the shadows, the past whispered, waiting. The night was far from over. Jonathan Crane's fingers trembled slightly as he adjusted the focus on his camera, the lens zooming in on the solitary candle that burned with an unnatural flame deep within the cathedral's crumbling nave. The light struggled against the encroaching shadows, casting long, flickering shapes across the cracked stone floor. Silence hung heavy, punctuated only by the faint drip of water somewhere in the distance. Jonathan exhaled slowly, fighting the cold that seemed to seep into his bones. "I've never seen anything like this," he muttered to himself, the skeptic's voice wavering for the first time since arriving at the cathedral. He glanced toward Father Elias, who stood nearby, eyes sharp but wary, clutching his journal tightly. The priest's gaunt face was etched with lines of fatigue, but his resolve remained unbroken. Jonathan shifted his weight, feeling the weight of his equipment tug at his shoulders: a camera, a flashlight, and a voice recorder. Each device was a lifeline, a tool to capture proof of the inexplicable phenomena they both sought to understand. Yet tonight, the cathedral felt alive in a way that no machine could capture fully. Suddenly, a cold gust swept through the nave, snuffing out Jonathan's flashlight. Darkness enveloped him like a living thing, and a low, whispering murmur echoed faintly around the vast, desolate space. His breath caught in his throat as he fumbled to turn the light back on. The whispers seemed to rise and fall with the flicker of the candle's blue and red glow, as if the flame itself breathed secrets into the cold air. "Did you hear that?" Jonathan called out, voice barely above a whisper. Father Elias nodded grimly. "The cathedral's curse is stirring. It does not like our presence." Jonathan swallowed hard, his journalistic curiosity clashing with a primal fear he could not deny. He turned back to his camera's display and paused the recording. Replaying the footage, he froze in place, eyes widening. Beside the candle, a shadowy figure flickered into view, a ghostly silhouette distorting and twisting with the flame's eerie light. "No way," Jonathan breathed. "What the hell is that?" Elias stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "The eternal flame feeds on death and despair. It's more than just superstition. It's a curse." The sinister presence grew bolder as the night deepened. What began as subtle disturbances soon escalated to outright attacks. Jonathan found himself face to face with an unseen force, invisible hands grasping at his throat, chilling his breath and squeezing the air from his lungs. He stumbled backward, heart pounding, gasping for air as the cathedral seemed to close in around him. "Elias!" he shouted, barely able to keep his footing. The priest rushed to his side, placing a steadying hand on Jonathan's shoulder. "Hold fast. We must not falter now." Despite his fear, Jonathan's determination hardened. He pressed record again, capturing every terrifying moment. His skepticism, once an impenetrable shield, cracked under the relentless weight of evidence. The curse was real, malevolent, and growing stronger. Throughout the harrowing night, Jonathan documented the supernatural wrath that the eternal flame unleashed. Each recording brought new revelations and new dangers. His camera caught fleeting glimpses of restless souls bound to the cathedral, their faces twisted in eternal torment. His voice recorder captured whispered prayers and ghostly lamentations. Yet, amidst the terror, Jonathan found an unexpected bond with Elias. The priest's faith, though shaken, offered a fragile anchor in the storm. Their alliance, born of necessity, grew into a partnership forged in shared fear and resolve. As dawn approached, the cathedral's shadows seemed to retreat, but the sense of menace lingered. Jonathan lowered his camera, exhaustion weighing heavily on him. He glanced at Elias, whose eyes reflected the same haunted understanding. "We were getting closer," Elias said quietly. "But the price may be higher than we imagined." Jonathan nodded, the line between skeptic and believer blurring irrevocably. The eternal flame's curse was no longer a distant mystery, it was a living nightmare, and they were trapped within its consuming heat. The night had taken its toll, but the story was far from over. Jonathan knew that to uncover the truth, He would have to risk everything: his sanity, his safety, and perhaps even his soul. And as the candle flickered once more, casting its unholy light across the ancient stones, he understood that the eternal flame was watching, waiting for its next move. With the first light of morning filtering through the broken, stained glass, Jonathan steadied his breath and prepared to face what lay beneath the cathedral's surface, where darkness and fire intertwined in a deadly dance. The investigation was no longer just a story to tell, it was a battle to survive, and the eternal flame was far from finished.